Hey guys, yesterday we learned how to rewrite logs and exponentials, write logs in exponential form and exponentials in log form. So we're actually going to somewhat apply that today in solving problems. So I'm going to try to do as many of these as I can without running too long in this video. And then I will create some problems for you to do in the assignment. So if you remember what I said yesterday, I said a log is a question. And here's the question that it is. This question is 6 to what power gives me 216? So I'm actually going to rewrite that. 6 to what power equals 216? That's the question. So and this one is actually the easier one of these. Obviously you see fractions that may scare you. But another way of thinking about this is 6 to the x power equals 216. So you may be able to answer it. I'll start over here. You may be able to think about this and say, well, I know 6 to the third power is 216. So then this equals 3. And that is correct. Sorry, my bread maker just went off. So remember, a log is a question. 6 to what power gives me 216? Third power. And so that one's already answered, but I do want to show you how else you could solve this. So one way to do this, and this is going to be true with all of these, and again, I'm going to try to do as many as I can here, is you're going to set this problem equal to x. So what you're looking for is x. So set it equal to x. We don't know what it equals, so we're going to set it equal to x. And then we're going to rewrite it in exponential form, which is kind of what we already done. So this is logarithmic form. And if you remember, to write it in exponential form, the base stays the same. So the base here is 6, so the base in my exponential will be 6. And then we just switch these two. So the exponent will be x, and the answer will be 216. And now we're solving for x. And so some of you may be asking, well, how do we do that? Well, if you remember what we just went over last week, we went over solving exponentials, and what you want to do is find a common base. Well, 216 is 6 to the third power. So you would rewrite 216 as 6 to the third power, making sure to find a common base. And then this would be 6 to the x power. So we just bring it down. Well, now that we have a common base, we just get rid of the bases and set the exponents equal to each other. Well, there's nothing really to do because the exponents are just x and 3. So we would say x equals 3. And so again, a log is a question. And let me do an easier one real quick that's actually not written here, just to kind of explain it. So I'm going to go down here. Oops. And I'll do one more of the harder ones to kind of, or a few more actually of the harder ones. So if I said log base 2 of 8, and I wanted to know what that is. Okay, so the question is 2 to what power gives me 8? Well, I know 2 to the third power gives me 8. So log base 2 of 8 is equal to 3. So again, that's kind of the question. Some problems are a little bit easier like this one, to where you don't have to necessarily do much. You don't have to actually set up an equation or anything, but some are not quite that simple. And a good example would be something like this one here. So when it's not quite as simple, now some of you may be able to do this without actually writing out the equation. That's fine. But what I want you to do, if you're having trouble figuring out 5 to what power gives me 1 over 25, set it equal to x, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for what it equals, and then rewrite it in exponential form. So to do that, you get rid of the log, the base stays the same, and then just the x and 1/5 change positions. And now what we have to do is, this is an exponential equation, so what we need to do is find a common base. Well, what would be the common base between 5 and 1/25? Well, if you remember, 25 is 5 squared. So then what would be 1 over 25? Well, if you remember what we talked about last week, when it's written like this, that means we're going to have a negative exponent. So since 25 is 5 squared, 1 over 25 is 5 to the negative second. And you can plug it in your calculator just to test me. Anything to a negative power is just the same thing except under 1, okay? So then this will be 5 to the x. We're just bringing that down. And then since we have the same base, we just get rid of the base and set the exponents equal to each other. So there's not much to do here other than say x equals -2. And some of you may have been able to do that, which is great. And so you could have, well, 5 to the -2nd power is 1/25. So some of you may have been able to do that without kind of doing all that equation stuff. I'm going to skip this one for the sake of time, but I do want to do one like, let's say 5. And I'll do it in a different color just so it's not getting convoluted over here. So 32 to what power gives me 2? Now some of you may be thinking, well, that's nothing. Well, it is actually something, and it seems weird because it's, 2 is smaller than 32, so you would think they would need to be switched, but we'll see what we get here. So I'm going to rewrite this in exponential form, so it'd be 32 to the x power equals 2. Because remember, when you write it in exponential form, the base stays the same. Some of y'all missed that on the questions yesterday. And then you just switch to 2 and x, making sure the log's not there anymore. Well, then now, what's the common base? Well, the common base would be 2, because 32 is 2 to the 5th power. And I'm going to rewrite it with that exponent. And then this, so I'm going to rewrite this a little bit different. 2 is the same thing as 2 to the 1st power. So I want you to kind of get that. And then remember, when you have a power to a power, you just multiply those. So it'd be 5x equals 2 to the 1st. And now that we have the same base, we just get rid of the base and set the exponents equal to each other. Divide both sides by 5 and you get x equals 1/5. Some of y'all, when you divide both sides by 5, you put 5 as the answer. Make sure you know what's on top and what's on bottom. So hopefully this helps. I'm going to give you a few problems I want you to work out. Remember, what you want to do is set it equal to x, rewrite it, and then kind of do what we did last week, which is find a common base and solve.